Before the Soviet Union even existed, Russian engineers were already experimenting with armored warfare. In this video, I will talk about every Russian tank ever built. So we starting with the early Russian Empire and pre-Soviet experiments. The Vezdekhod of 1915 was one of the earliest tracked vehicle concepts in Russia. It was small, lightly armored, and powered by a weak engine. It was closer to an armored tractor than a tank, but it proved that tracked vehicles could traverse rough terrain better than wheeled designs. Next is, the most infamous design was the Tsar Tank, also known as the Lebedenko tank. It was built in 1915. It featured massive front wheels over 9 meters tall and a small rear roller. The idea was to simply roll over obstacles, but during testing it became stuck in soft ground and was abandoned. Therefore, it never entered service. Next is the Mendeleev tank, designed in 1916 and existed only on paper. It was an advanced concept for its time, proposing heavy armor, a naval-style gun, and even adjustable suspension. Now let's talk about the early Soviet era and interwar period between 1920s to 1930s. After the revolution, the Soviet Union rushed to build a modern armored force. During this period, Soviet tank design exploded in every direction. So we start with light tanks. The T-12 was an early attempt at a domestically designed light tank. It suffered from mechanical issues and poor mobility, but it helped Soviet engineers gain experience. Next is the T-18, also called the MS-1, became the first true mass-produced Soviet tank. Lightly armored and armed with a small gun, it served mainly as a training and infantry support vehicle. The T-19 was an experimental improvement over the T-18, but reliability issues prevented full adoption. The T-20 Komsomolets was not a true tank, but a tankette, an artillery tractor. Lightly armored and armed with a machine gun, it was widely used to tow anti-tank guns in the late 1930s. The T-26 became one of the most produced tanks of the interwar period. Based on a British design, it served as the Red Army's primary infantry support tank and saw combat in Spain, Mongolia, and early World War II. The T-27 tankette was extremely small, lightly armored, and armed only with a machine gun. It was quickly rendered obsolete but produced in large numbers. The amphibious T-38 and later T-40 were reconnaissance tanks designed to swim across rivers. They were innovative but poorly protected and vulnerable in real combat. The T-50 was intended to replace older light tanks with better armor and firepower, but its complexity limited production. Now let's talk about fast and cavalry tanks. The BT-2, BT-5, and BT-7 were built for speed. These cavalry tanks could travel at extremely high speeds and even remove their tracks to drive on roads. The BT-7M added a diesel engine, improving range and reliability. These tanks directly influenced the later T-34. Now let's talk about medium tanks. The T-24 was an early medium tank attempt that never reached full production. The T-28 was a multi-turret medium tank designed for breakthrough operations. Though impressive on paper, it was mechanically complex and vulnerable to modern anti-tank weapons. Next are heavy tanks. The T-35 was a massive, multi-turret heavy tank, built more for intimidation than practicality. It was unreliable and obsolete by the time World War II began. Now move forward to World War II era. World War II forced Soviet tank design into brutal efficiency. Of World War II era, let's talk about light tanks. The T-30, T-60, T-70, and T-80 were emergency wartime light tanks. They were lightly armored and lightly armed, used mainly for reconnaissance and infantry support when heavier tanks were unavailable. Next are the medium tanks of World War II era. The T-34 became the most influential Soviet tank ever built. The early T-34 and 76 balanced armor and firepower, while the T-34 and 85 added a larger gun and better turret, allowing it to fight late-war German armor more effectively. Next are heavy tanks of World War II era. The KV-1 introduced heavy armor that stunned early German forces. The KV-1S traded some armor for speed, while the massive KV-2 carried a huge howitzer for bunker busting. The KV-85 bridged the gap to the next generation of heavy tanks. Then IS series followed, starting with IS-1 and the famous IS-2, armed with a devastating 122mm gun. The IS-3 introduced a futuristic pike nose design, while the IS-4 pushed armor thickness even further. Now let's talk about flamethrower variants. The OT-26, OT-34, and KV-8 replaced machine guns with flamethrowers, used to clear bunkers, trenches, and fortified positions with terrifying effect. Next is early Cold War era, late 1940s to 1950s. After the war, the Soviets restructured their tank doctrine entirely. So, starting with light tanks, the PT-76 amphibious light tank became a key reconnaissance platform, capable of swimming across rivers and operating in marshland. Next are medium tanks. The T-44 quietly fixed many layout flaws and became the direct ancestor of post-war tanks. The T-54 and T-55 followed, forming the backbone of Soviet and global armored forces for decades. Next are the heavy tanks. The IS-5, IS-6, and massive IS-7 were experimental heavy tanks exploring the limits of armor and firepower. The IS-8, later known as the T-10, became the final Soviet heavy tank, with improved versions T-10A and T-10M.